Bishop Michael Martin of the Diocese of Charlotte, North Carolina, issued a directive to fully comply with the late Pope Francis's crackdown on the traditional Latin Mass this week. The directive restricts the TLM to one non-parish within his diocese, down from 4. What is Bishop Martin trying to achieve, and will other dioceses follow suit? Here with analysis of the story, liturgy expert, author, and composer, Peter Kwasniewski. Peter, thank you for being here. Bishop Martin calls this limitation on the old rite an effort to promote the unity of the Church, Peter. How does cracking down further on a valid form of the ancient Catholic liturgy promote unity, does it?
It doesn't promote unity at all. In fact, the 4 pastors of the parishes affected by this decree, it's being removed, that is, the Latin Mass is being removed from all 4 of these places. These pastors wrote a respectful but passionate plea to the bishop before he released his edict, begging him not to do this because they knew it was coming, and saying that they have no problems with unity in their parish. The faithful are happy to worship at either form of the Mass. They go, some of them, back and forth between them. The pastor said, we simply don't have a problem. And if you do what you're proposing to do, then we will have many problems. We'll have over 1,000 people who are very upset, who have done nothing wrong, who are not calling into question the papacy or the last council as a valid council or anything. They just want to worship in spirit and truth in this beautiful, venerable form that nourished the spiritual lives of so many countless saints in the Catholic Church.
Well, and they want to worship in their parishes, Peter, and this is the particularly cruel bit of Pope Francis's legislation. You know, Traditionis Custodes really expels these people who follow the Latin Mass, want to celebrate the Latin Mass, expels them from their own parishes. They're not allowed in a parish setting. So Bishop Martin says he's just following Pope Francis's legislation here, and these restrictions were already underway. Your reaction, and I asked the Papal Posse about this on my podcast this week. Why do you think just when a new pope has arrived on the scene that a local bishop would institute what seems to be a draconian cram down and expulsion of the Latin Mass?
Yes, it's very peculiar. And I'm just going to say the timing of it, in the manner in which the bishop writes, indicates that he's rushing to push through something that he's afraid Pope Leo XIV wouldn't agree with. Pope Leo XIV says he wants to be a bridge builder. He wants to bring unity to a divided church. Apparently, the cardinals in the pre-conclave meetings were talking about the need to overcome factions and divisions. This is not the way that that's going to happen. But more particularly, the 4 pastors who wrote to the bishop begging him not to go through with this decree, pointed out that he's implementing Traditionis Custodes more strictly than it needs to be. They pointed out to him that he could have requested further extensions, which have been requested and granted for other dioceses. He could have established more than one non-parish site. He could have done that. There's nothing that would prevent him from doing that. There's nothing that says you have to have only one non-parish site. And finally, he could have invited in the Fraternity of St. Peter or the Institute of Christ the King, as other dioceses have done since Traditionis Custodes, in order to provide 24/7, 365 days a year pastoral care for the faithful attached to the traditional Roman Rite. He could have done any of those things, as his other brother bishops have done, but he chose not to, which means that he wanted to own this. This is an ideological move. He really believes in eliminating the Latin Mass.
What do you make of the notion at the heart of Bishop Martin's efforts here? What really, the narrative that's at the center of it is that the traditional Latin Mass community was fomenting a movement to deny Vatican II's liturgical reforms.
Actually, the strange thing about Bishop Martin is that he wrote not only an edict that was dated, I have it printed here, May 23rd, but also issued a 4-page document of clarifications, answers to objections. And in this document, he admits that most of the faithful who attend the TLM are in complete communion with the magisterium of the church and her supreme pontiffs and do not deny the legitimacy of the liturgical reform. He admits that. And he even says, I'm aware that some of these Catholics may leave the church or may leave the diocese, and that many of them may stop donating, but I'm okay with that. I accept that as the price that we have to pay in order to get rid of the traditional Latin Mass. It's heartless, and it's not the heart of a shepherd. Absolutely. Can you
Yeah.
imagine a bishop saying, I don't care if people go elsewhere, if they leave the church, if they stop donating. I just want to get rid of the liturgy that they love.
It's unbelievable. Peter, there was a leaked letter which turns out to be a draft of upcoming liturgical restrictions that Bishop Martin sought to impose on the Diocese of Charlotte, but I guess he killed it. He squashed the letter and said, no, we're not releasing it now, but only after the backlash. Among his wish list is the banishment of kneeling during communion, the end of altar rails, the striking of Latin from the liturgy, even in the new Mass. Now, look, you're a liturgy expert. How does that comport with Vatican II? Did it ever call for the banishment of Latin, Peter?
Yeah, of course not. I mean, this is one of those urban legends, that people say, well, after Vatican II, the church said no more Latin. Well, Vatican II itself said, preserve the Latin. It says everybody should know how to say or sing together in Latin the Lord's Prayer and the ordinary of the Mass, the Gloria, the Credo, the Sanctus, the Agnus Dei. And subsequent legislation has only underlined all of these things. So the amazing thing about the leaked letter, and it's a huge document, it's like a 20-page document. He does not only what you mentioned, but he wants to ban classical vestments. He says priests can't wear lace, they can't wear fiddlebacks. He wants to ban crucifixes and candles on the altar. He wants to ban the priests praying private vesting prayers before Mass. He wants to ban veils for the women. I mean, it's absurd. Every single thing that he lists is contrary either to standing liturgical legislation, standing for the Novus Ordo, or it's contrary to customs that have never been condemned.
Yeah, I was stunned by the granularity of it, Peter. It's so specific and petty. I mean, down to, I will tell you, full confession, I have, because I bounce between the old Latin Mass and the Novus Ordo when we can't make it or I'm traveling. I will say at the moment of consecration, my Lord, my God. Well, that was what St. Thomas said, the apostle, when Jesus appeared to him. That is a traditional practice, and it's in the old rite. It's a response. If I want to quietly say that to myself during a Novus Ordo Mass, frankly, that's none of the bishop's or anybody's business. That's my spiritual life. And yet, he calls that out and says, you can't do that anymore. You can't say it. The St. Michael prayer at the end of Mass, instituted by the last Pope Leo, suddenly stricken. We don't want that anymore. Your reaction to the overall, it gives you insight into the mind of who you're dealing with, yes?
Yes. What we're dealing with, unfortunately, is a Franciscan formed in the 1970s, which is the only thing worse than a Jesuit formed in the 1970s. I mean, if I could put it that way. He entered the he entered Bishop Martin, the Franciscans, in 1979. So certainly the spirit of the 1970s is very much there. And if you look at what he did as chaplain of the Catholic chaplaincy at Duke University some years ago when he was in the Raleigh diocese, he was trying to implement exactly the same policies. He's learned nothing. He hasn't paid attention to the fact that there's a huge vibe shift, as some people call it, going on in the Catholic Church. The young people are tired of kumbaya and guitars and jamborees. They want sacredness, reverence, kneeling, all these sorts of things. He's completely out of step with the times, the signs of the times.
Peter, I have about 3 minutes left. I have to get to this, and you've hit on where I want to go here. We've seen this kind of rough and frankly tyrannical treatment of others who are devoted to the old Latin Mass. Tell me what you're hearing from those who frequent the Latin Mass, particularly the young. I keep running into young families, young guys, predominantly young men. You see them as you travel the country. They are going to the old Mass because they want the old traditions. They want the ancient ways. And many are now telling me they're drifting to Orthodoxy or Eastern rites. What is the challenge here for these bishops? Not only this bishop, but all these bishops.
Yeah, the challenge is they need to wake up to the fact that what speaks to people in 2025, what speaks to them in a postmodern age, when there's so much nihilism and secularism and worldliness and emptiness in people's lives, what speaks to them is rich, symbolic language, pageantry, silence, adoration, Gregorian chant, these things which are, you could say, countercultural, not necessarily in themselves, but right now they certainly are. These things are powerful incentives to piety and to prayer and to an interior life, which is very much against the grain. And so the bishops that are in older generations, they have to realize we're not fighting the battles of the 1960s or 70s anymore. We're in a totally different situation. And if Bishop Martin doesn't want to see every priest and every lay person of his diocese alienated from him and really just embittered about him, which is the direction things are going in, he should do a 180-degree turn, apologize for what he's done, rescind all of this legislation, and just let the Diocese of Charlotte be healthy and conservative, and resign if he doesn't want that kind of a diocese.
Well, at a time when churches around the world are trying to figure out how to get young people to come in, you've got them crashing through your doors, but they want the orthodoxy and they want the old rites and the old ways, and you tell them, nope, no room for you, we're shutting that down. In fact, this is madness. Will this blow up in Charlotte and provoke a response by Pope Leo XIV, or does the Pope just sort of look the other way and let this play out diocese by diocese? What's your gut?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can tell you for a fact that there are already canonical recourses going from the Diocese of Charlotte to Rome, from clergy and lay people who are saying our rights are being trampled on. We have an autocratic bishop who doesn't listen to us. He's completely unsynodal. He hasn't visited a single parish that offers the traditional Latin Mass. He hasn't gotten to know anybody. He did all of this fresh into his office. Conservatives wait for years before they change where one candlestick is, and then the liberals come in and they sweep everything away in 2 days. This is the way that this bishop has been. I don't know if Leo XIV, I don't know how he's going to react to this. If he really cares about peace and unity, he needs to find a way to walk back the cruel and unjust and unpastoral provisions of Traditionis Custodes. He really does. And I think that, people may be forcing his hand, the French bishops too.
Yeah, it feels like this was a test case. You get the feeling this wasn't engineered in Charlotte, that this may have, other tentacles in it, but we'll see how it plays out. By the way, we did a deep dive of this issue and the entire crackdown on the Latin Mass around the world on the Posse over on Arroyo Grande podcast. You people should check it out. Peter, before we go, I must get your reaction to this story out of Germany. Apparently, German Catholics are being scandalized by a performance at the Paderborn Cathedral on the occasion of 1,250 years of something called Westphalia. Take a look. Peter, while the bishops are focused on banishing ancient Catholic worship from churches, why are modern dancers and headless chickens in diapers not a problem?
The Old Latin Mass is obviously much more dangerous than any amount of strange liturgical dances with headless chickens. That's the only answer that we could give. No, this is all of the same kind of modern nonsense that is really sickening to the faithful. I heard that over 20,000 German Catholics protested against this Paderborn exhibition. And in Germany, to have 20,000 Catholics protest something, it's got to be pretty bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it forced the German bishops did come out and apologize for this outrage, but that's the least of their worries. And you had the German president there. I mean, to allow a sacred place of worship, of Catholic worship, to be used in this way, it's despicable. It's so horrible. But follow the work of Dr. Peter Kwasniewski at peterkwasniewski.com. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Raymond.